Most people think you need a big nursery, 30, 40, even 50 children just to make money. And that if you're opening something smaller, they assume it's not even worth doing. But that's not actually true. I recently supported someone open nursery with just 19 spaces. And based on how it's been structured, they're on track to make between 60 to 80,000 per year. Not turnover, profit. And I've seen both sides of this. I've seen people take on big buildings, high rent, large teams, and struggle to make it work. And I've seen smaller, well-structured nurseries run properly, generate strong, consistent income. So in this video, I'm going to break this down properly, because if you're working with a smaller budget or looking at a smaller building, this might completely change how you think about what's possible. And if you're thinking about open nursery, especially on the smaller side, watch this all the way through, because small decisions early on can completely change whether your nursery makes money or just about survives. But before we get into all of that, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the channel Open Nursery with myself, Kurt Liania, where I support people across the UK with open nurseries. Everything from small setups on tighter budgets right through to large settings and multi-site growth. And one thing I see all the time is people underestimating what's possible with a smaller nursery. I've worked with people who had very limited budgets, people opening their first setting, people unsure if they can make it work, and with the right structure, they've gone on to open successfully, pass Ofsted and build something that actually works for them. So let's address the main belief first, because this is where most people get stuck. People think, if I don't have 30 or 40 children, I won't make money. And on the surface, it makes sense. More children equals more income. But that's only part of the picture, because what actually determines whether a nursery makes money isn't just its size. It is how the space is used, how the staffing is structured, what your fixed costs look like, and how efficiently everything runs day to day. I've seen nurseries with 40 plus places that are constantly under pressure, and I've seen smaller settings that are calm, controlled, and profitable. So the real question isn't how big is your nursery, it's is it structured properly. Now let me give you a real example. I supported someone open nursery with just 19 places. Now on paper, a lot of people would look at that and think that's too small, that won't make much money, and is it even worth it? But when we actually sat down and structured it properly, everything changed. We looked at how the rooms are being used, how to maximize capacity within the space, keeping staffing lean but safe, making sure ratios actually work financially, and setting realistic occupancy targets. Nothing fancy, just structured properly. And based on that, they're on track to generate around 60 to 80,000 pound profit per year. Not turnover, as I said, profit. And just to put that into perspective, that's more than a lot of full-time salaries from a 19-place nursery. And the key thing here is, this isn't an end goal. This is her starting point. We've structured this as her starter nursery. Something manageable, something profitable, and something she can build confidence with. And then once she's settled, once systems are in place, and once she's comfortable running it, the plan is to expand. So instead of jumping straight into something big and high risk, she's starting controlled, making money, and then growing from a strong position. That's the difference. And this is why smaller nurseries can actually work really well when they're structured properly, because what you're dealing with is completely different. Lower rent. You're not committing to a huge building with huge overheads. Lower staffing costs. Smaller teams are easier to manage, and you have more control over wages. Less complexity. You're not juggling loads of rooms, loads of staff, or loads of moving parts. And it's easier to manage. You can actually stay on top of everything. Quality, consistency, day-to-day operations. Plus, you have strong relationships with families. You know your parents, you know your children, and that has real value. You're not trying to manage a big operation from day one. You're building something that's controlled, stable, and designed to work. And from there, you can grow. That's the part most people miss. They think small means limited, but when it's done properly, small can actually be a very strong starting point. So let's break this down in a simple way. Let's say you've got 18 to 20 children. You've got your fees coming in, your funded hours, your session structure, that's your income. Then you take away staffing, rent, utilities, food, and general running costs. And what's left is your profit. Now where people go wrong is they don't actually look at this properly. They either assume costs are higher than they need to be, don't structure staffing efficiently, or don't fully understand how income works. Or the opposite. They underestimate how much revenue they can generate. They don't think about occupancy properly. They don't structure sessions in a way that works. And this is why you can have two nurseries with the same number of children in similar areas, and one is doing really well and the other is constantly struggling. And that will most likely be because one is structured properly and the other isn't. And this is exactly what we worked through with the 19-place nursery. It wasn't just let's open. It was let's make sure it's actually worked financially. So here's where small nurseries sometimes don't work. And it's not because they're small. It's because of the decisions made early on. They get the wrong building. The space doesn't allow proper layout, or limits how many children you can realistically take. Or they have poor layout. Rooms aren't used properly. Space gets wasted, therefore capacity drops without even realising. Inefficient staffing. Too many staff too early on. Or not structured properly around ratios. Or setting unrealistic expectations, thinking it will just work itself out without actually planning numbers. Or finally, no financial planning, not knowing your break-even point, how many children you need, or what your actual costs look like. And this is the key point. It's not the size that causes the problem, it's the structure. Because I've seen small nurseries work really well, and I've seen bigger ones struggle. And the difference is always the same, how it was set up at the start. Now let's just put this into perspective, because on the surface, a larger nursery can look more impressive. More rooms, more children, bigger setup. But what often comes with that is higher rent, larger staffing costs, more complexity and more pressure day to day. And I've worked with people in that position where everything looks good on the outside, but behind the scenes it's tight. Margins are tight. Staffing is harder to manage. Everything feels heavier. Whereas a small nursery, when it's structured properly, can feel very different. More stable, more controlled, easier to manage, and still profitable. You actually understand your numbers, you know what's coming in, and you know what's going out. And instead of constantly trying to keep up, you're in control of the business. That's a very different position to be in. And this is why this approach works really well for certain people, especially if you have a smaller budget, are opening your first nursery, want something manageable, don't want to take on huge risks straight away, or you're looking to build something and then grow from it. This is exactly the type of setup that makes sense. You're not trying to do everything at once. You're building something that works, learning how to run it properly, and then putting yourself in a position to expand later on. And I've seen that work many times, because the goal isn't just open nursery. The goal is open a nursery that actually works. Open something sustainable. Open something that pays you properly. And as I said, that comes down to how you set it up from the start. Not the size, the structure. So if you're watching this and thinking this actually feels more achievable, that's exactly where you should be. But this is also where people make mistakes. Because it feels achievable, they rush into it without structuring it properly. And that can be where things start to go wrong. And that's why I created my course. Because most people don't need more motivation, they need clarity. Inside the course, I work you through how to choose the right building, how to structure your nursery properly, how to make numbers work, how to prepare for Ofsted, and how to actually get open. So you're not guessing and you're not trying to figure it out on your own. And if you want something more personalized, you can also book a consultation with me. We can go through your idea, your building, your numbers, your setup, and make sure you're moving in the right direction before you commit to anything. Or if you just want to talk things through first, you can use the contact form, which you should see a link to on the screen now. Because getting this right early doesn't just save you time, it puts you in a completely different position once you open. And if you want to understand how to actually choose the right building, click the link on the screen now. But finally, I want to thank you for watching, wish you all the best. Don't forget to reach out for support, and I'll see you on the next video. God bless.